today is an experiment with chocolate pudding. I got the recipe from Tyler Florence on the Food Network. And it's a chocolate pudding that is cooked with eggs. And you can see that what happens with the difference between cornstarch and guar gum. Guar gum does not need to be heated in order to cause a thickening effect. So you can see the thickening effect happen earlier than it does in the cornstarch chocolate pudding. The first thing we do for this recipe is separate 3 eggs. And the way I like to separate eggs is to pull the 2 halves of the shell apart, and you can see that sometimes the shell does not break evenly, and sometimes you drop it in your egg whites, but you can still save that yolk and keep it full, and then you can put it in your bowl where you are putting your egg yolks you want to use. You'll whisk up your egg yolks, add half a cup of milk, whisk that together, add 2 teaspoons of vanilla, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and finally 4 teaspoons of cornstarch. And we'll add it a little bit at a time so it mixes in really well. If you try to mix cornstarch in too quickly, you will get what a lot of people call fish eyes, which basically look like the eyes of fish, and it's where the cornstarch doesn't mix in and it forms little gel things that are pretty resistant to even vigorous mixing. And that is not what you want. Once that mixture is all set, we move over to the saucepan. In the saucepan, we'll mix 1.5 cups of milk, 1/2 cup of sugar, and 1/3 cup of cocoa. And then we'll bring that to a simmer. Not quite a boil. When it just is starting to think about boiling, we'll stop the heat. But first we'll turn on the heat, and we take it to about a medium, and we need to mix all of this cocoa in. And when mixing cocoa, it will often make all of these little bubbles that are air bubbles just coated in cocoa. And what you want to do is move your whisk up and down in order to convince these air bubbles of cocoa to mix in. And adding the heat helps. And eventually you start getting a better mixture. Then when you finally got all your cocoa and sugar mixed in with your milk, you can wait for it to start to simmer. You can see maybe some steam coming up, and they're just tiny little bits of bubbles boiling up, and that's where we're stopping the heating of the milk at this point. Come over to our egg mixture, and what we want to do is slowly pour in this chocolate while whisking so that we don't get scrambled eggs instead of pudding. And we just want to heat up the eggs gently so they don't get cooked too quickly before they have a chance to mix in with everything else. You can start to see the boiling, so we'll give it another mix, and we'll time 2 minutes of boiling, and it'll start to thicken while it's boiling because those starches are starting to gelatinize, which means the little pockets of starch are starting to expand and rupture and move the starch molecules out into the rest of the pudding so that they take up more space, and that's what gives us the texture of pudding. Here we are back at our clean bowl. I have a label in the bottom so that I know that this is the starch pudding. And I'll put all of the pudding into this bowl from the saucepan. And then in order to prevent the pudding from getting that skin that cooked puddings sometimes do, we'll put plastic wrap right on top of the pudding, because the skin is a reaction with the air that the pudding makes kind of to protect itself. And it won't need to protect itself from the air if it has this plastic wrap touching it. And then there's no air. Then we'll put that in the fridge and wait for it to set, and then we can have our taste test. Next we'll make our pudding with guar gum. And again, it doesn't matter if the egg yolks are broken because we're gonna whip them right up. Again, we add half a cup of milk, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then this time, instead of cornstarch, we're going to add guar gum. And with guar gum, you really don't want it to make the things like fish eyes that cornstarch would do. So you have to be even more careful than you are with the cornstarch. So what I do is I use a little tea strainer, and I put in just a little bit at a time while I'm whisking. And based on experiments that I did, I found that using 1 1/4 teaspoons of guar gum was the correct amount of gum to replace the 4 teaspoons of cornstarch that we used earlier. Now we come back to our egg mixture, and you can see already that it has thickened, and that's because the guar gum does its thickening before cooking, unlike cornstarch, which needs to cook in order to thicken. So again, we'll take our warm milk with cocoa and sugar and slowly add it to our egg mixture. Again, we want to warm our eggs up slowly so that they don't cook. We pour into our bowl again for going into the fridge. And here we have the finished puddings. The one with the cornstarch is on the left and the one with the guar gum is on the right. And then we'll put the recipes up for a few seconds. And if you want to see the results of our taste test or anything else about this guar gum recipe, I recommend you watch the other video about guar gum pudding that is linked right here. Thank you for watching Sportle and Trivet. If you have any questions about any other types of food ingredients that you want me to tell you about, put it in the comments and I will try to answer your questions. Thank you.